Hello, welcome back to the Flicks Forum podcast with Jesse and MJ, where each episode we go back and look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This is our 18th day of Podmas, where we are putting out an episode every day in the lead up to Christmas. Today, our Netflix film is the 66th film. It's a 2018 sci-fi horror, The Cloverfield Paradox. It's directed by Julius Onah, and it stars Daniel Bruhl, Elizabeth Debicki, Aksel Hennie, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, Chris O'Dowd, John Ortiz, David Oyelowo and Zhang Siyi.
That's really good, mate. I know I criticise you for reading out too many cast members sometimes, but that's perfect for this one.
I think you needed to talk about a few people in this.
Okay? There's a lot of characters that play proper roles in this. But can you believe we've done 18 episodes in a row every single day?
This is a week away.
So this is... Do you think we'll do it in 2020? What are your thoughts right now? I'm asking you on the spot, on air. Do you think we'll do Podmas next year?
You put me under the pump. It's been a big commitment. Not going to lie. It's hectic.
The door is open, is what our listeners can hear right now.
Maybe we just work on... I don't even know what we work on.
Maybe we'll do 365 episodes a year. Doing every day.
Nah, I'll pass.
Actually, Netflix will run out of content.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Although we're still... What's this? This was released on the 4th of February 2018, so we're still a long way behind.
Whew.
And Netflix isn't slowing down.
I'm feeling exhausted, and you saying that is making me feel even
only got a week,
more exhausted.
Hey, firstly, a week left of Podmas.
Yeah.
Then it's a week till Christmas. Christmas is great. You know what? I'll give you some time off over Christmas.
Really?
I'll give you a week off.
That's very kind of you. I'll take more than a week, I think. I'll take a month. It'll be great.
You can take a month or we'll just record 3 episodes in that month. That's fine.
Okay. Really? I don't like the sound of that. All right, so we start our show with our Fast Flicks, where we do a quick summary of the film. MJ, give us your summary.
Let's do it. For Cloverfield Paradox, an international team of scientists has been up in space for nearly 2 years trying to uncover a sustainable energy source when their expedition goes AWOL and they find themselves in an alternate dimension.
Nice.
Is that right? Were they trying to find a sustainable energy source? Is that what they
correct?
Doing? Yeah. I wasn't sure if
correct.
I made a note that say your Fast Flicks, then double check with Jesse whether that was actually what happened. Yep, cool.
Good. I've gone very similar but very different.
Oh, that's intriguing.
So I've said the world is running out of energy, so a diverse bunch of people go to space to try and fix the problem.
Yeah, you said diverse, I said international.
I'm glad we've both.
They don't shy away from the fact that they've got someone from different countries.
I
they
kind of like that.
Put their logos on their.
I was a little bit confused with some of the logos on their shirts, but I liked that.
Like we can tell by their accents that they're not all American. It's okay.
Not necessarily, because I've got some problems with some of the accents too.
Cool.
So this one, we like to check out what we can find about a film, and this one there's a lot, an awful lot.
Can I throw to you? So
yes,
you're a J.J. Abrams fan.
I am a massive J.J. Abrams fan.
And this is, somewhat of a J.J. Abrams brainchild, whilst it has been sort of tweaked and pushed and forced down this rabbit hole.
Definitely.
But talk to me about Cloverfield in general. This Cloverfield, it's a trilogy right now. It's probably going to be more than a trilogy. What is this Cloverfield world, and how does this film become a part of it?
Spoiler alert, we're going to spoil this film. So before I start going on about Cloverfield, if you haven't seen Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane, or The Cloverfield Paradox, probably pause.
Okay.
Relax. Come back when you've watched them.
That's a good point. It's hard not to ruin them. Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the previous films.
Yep.
I didn't mind this film. We're not talking about that yet, but didn't mind this film. I love, like I said, I like J.J. Abrams' work. Cloverfield is this world that I'm not 100% sure they know where they're going.
Yeah, cool. That's how I feel about it too.
And so the first film was an original idea. I thought it worked really well. I really liked it. The second film, 10 Cloverfield Lane, I really liked the film apart from the Cloverfield aspects.
It's a good film, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was a very good film if you cut. And then again, this film's similar to the second one, where it's
100%.
It's a film where they've just dumped some Cloverfield ideas into it. So I'm torn a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really confused about this whole Cloverfield world, and I'm sure we'll keep talking about it in general. But this film, similar as you said to 10 Cloverfield Lane, this was based on just another film.
Yeah.
So the film was called God Particle.
Yep.
They're making this film called God Particle. Script from Oren Uziel. Basically had the plot of the main film that we saw based up in space.
Yep.
All that stuff was as part of this film. So that script was acquired by Paramount Pictures and Bad Robot. So Bad Robot's J.J. Abrams' company.
Correct. Yep.
So it was acquired by them in 2012. They initially planned as part of Paramount's low-budget Insurge distribution label, but that label folded. So the production was expanded as a Paramount distributed film. And only during the production of the film, so they started making the film, did J.J. Abrams decide to link it to Cloverfield. So he adapted the screenplay, adding scenes to establish that connection.
Literally, that Michael character, his scenes.
All the stuff
just,
at Earth, really, yeah.
Earth, yeah. And that was based on test screenings where the test audience we want to know what's going on in Earth. So, okay, we can...
Yeah, we can show you. Actually, Cloverfield's going on Earth.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what happened with 10 Cloverfield Lane, which was a script called The Cellar, which makes a hell of a lot of sense.
It sure does. I love that film. I think that is such a good film.
Yeah, and you know what? That really does not need the Cloverfield
not at all.
to it.
John Goodman is amazing in that.
Yeah, they all actually are pretty good in that.
Yeah.
So, J.J. Abrams just kind of saw a link and kind of put it together, and narratively, it's a franchise now.
Yeah, which is weird.
So once they announced this film in late 2016, the film was still delayed several times. And then they had a surprise trailer that aired during the Super Bowl in 2018. February 4th.
This is an amazing market. This is sort of the first of what this is.
So they released a trailer during the Super Bowl on February 4th, 2018, advertising the film's final title for the first time, and the fact that it was releasing on Netflix, which no one knew, and then it released that night.
Straight after the Super Bowl, it was available to watch.
It's incredible,
crazy.
yeah.
Crazy.
This is similar to what happened with Blair Witch when the sequel came out. There's this new horror film by Adam Wingard called The Woods, and then all of a sudden, bang, it's called Blair Witch.
So this had a lot of different sort of working titles too. So it started off as a fake working title. It's called Clean Pass. And then, so obviously it had the God Particle, like you mentioned. Then a working title was Cloverfield Station. And then, another alternative title is the Cloverfield movie. This has gone through a lot. Compared to a lot of the films we've looked at, this has gone through a fair bit for Netflix.
But you could be an actor in this film, right? Probably anyone except for the guy who plays Michael. You could be an actor in this film, and it's like, oh, what film did you just shoot? Oh, it's a film called God Particle. Yeah. And then when it comes out as Cloverfield, you could be like, what? How in this... I did not even... You didn't even have to know that. Making that film, you wouldn't have even had to know.
Yeah, I've got a couple of examples. So this is the first Netflix film to be released on DVD.
Yep.
And because I love Cloverfield, I purchased the DVD. So I did a little... After I'd watched it on Netflix, I did a little bit of a comparison, and I checked out the special features.
You hadn't seen this film prior to us doing it for this podcast.
I've been wanting to watch it like a lot of Netflix films, and I sat on it and I checked out the special features, and it's really interesting. There's two mini little docos on the special features.
Okay.
And a majority of the cast in one of them talk about how when I first read for this script, it's a completely different movie. So it backs up what you're saying.
Yeah.
The cast were like, yeah, we signed on for this movie, but when you can watch it now, it's completely different. So I thought that was very interesting.
So according to Oren Uziel, who wrote the script, it was during production that he actually learnt that it was being connected to Cloverfield. So they're like, hey man, we're making your script into a movie. Oh, cool. And then they're filming it and they tell him. So then he had to rewrite a few scenes for that additional shooting. And he speculated the decision to Cloverfield was, as you sort of said, due to difficulty in marketing this standalone science fiction film. And felt there was a connection between the films that they could make some sort of anthology between them all.
Yeah.
And in a sense, it is. The movie's about each, seeing how people deal with these complex relations in this otherworldly drama. But so the scenes that were set on Earth were basically added to production, and then they felt that the test audiences were like, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah.
Which is debatable still.
Oh, okay.
No. I quite like the film, but it's still the link to Cloverfield is one thing that doesn't sit well with me. That's why we're sort of talking about it.
Yeah. So it was filmed in 2016.
Yeah.
So sat on it for 2 years, a year and a half or whatever. So
well, they probably had a bit of work on it. And
did you say how much it cost to make?
It did. It had a $26 million budget, which not a huge budget.
Yeah.
Is that what you got?
I had 45, but
that's
it's good. It's good to talk about.
I got 26. I saw $26 million estimated budget on IMDb.
Yep.
Now that could have been incorrect, but if it is a $26 million film, it's done a pretty good job. Good. So similar titles to that.
Yeah.
The most successful $26 million film at the box office was Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Okay.
Now that film did better than it should have, but that's a sign. $26 million is not a heap of money to play with. You're looking at 40-Year-Old Virgin, Philadelphia, Red Eye, New Year's Eve, Final Destination 2, Brothers.
Yep.
you're not playing with a heap
Not
of
a lot
money.
of special effects in those.
Exactly,
ones,
and this film is pretty reliant on it.
Yeah.
$45 million, a different story.
yeah. Well, so Netflix paid $50 million for the rights to this film.
Okay.
And it was made to Paramount, but Paramount said we still want to keep the rights for China and obviously the home release. So that's why you get it on DVD. And that's why I'm a little bit confused why this is on our list. Because there's other films that Netflix pretty much have in every country except one, but it's not on this original Netflix film list.
Okay.
So I thought that was quite interesting.
The other thing that was interesting is as soon as you watch it, it says something like a Netflix and Paramount Pictures production or something.
It does on Netflix.
Netflix and Paramount Pictures present.
When you chuck the DVD in, every mention of Netflix is removed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's more of a distribution partner there.
Yeah.
Now,
So very interesting. One other thing, we were talking about 10 Cloverfield Lane. So John Goodman's character, his name is Howard Stambler, and in this film there's like a little scene where there's this guy who wrote a book on Cloverfield and he's on the news coverage and his name was Mark Stambler. So I like the little connection that, and that they've confirmed that these guys are brothers. Like the J.J. Abrams said, yeah, they're brothers. So
you know
nice
what, like
connection.
If they make this, whether it's a fourth or a fifth movie that ties everything together from these three films, I'll be extremely satisfied. That'll be a really good effort.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, I think so this was obviously set in like 2026 or something. So
see, did I miss that? Did it say it somewhere? Because I read it online that it was
somewhere.
set in 2026, but I didn't see anywhere on the film that suggested that it was.
So I liked. So J.J. Abrams, he came out and he said, that spoiler alert, but at the end there's a monster money shot at the end, and it's like very over the top.
Oh yeah.
And Abrams said, when we tried it, it made us laugh, and this is him giving the audiences an extra dose of that classic Cloverfield, where you sort of, in the original Cloverfield, you're supposed to laugh at a lot of these interactions with the monsters. So I liked that he's come out and said, okay, we liked this and this is how it's done.
Yeah.
I reckon you're gonna
That
say something a little bit different.
That scene was we'll get to that in the scenes, but that didn't work for me one bit. One thing I did like was the small figurine slusho,
Yep.
which I did notice during the film, but I didn't actually link it back. But I think that initially appeared in Alias TV series.
Yep.
J.J.
Alias
Abrams.
is J.J. Abrams. Yep.
So, and then it was in Cloverfield as well as like a company or something like that. So It's a bit of a recurring theme.
Yeah, and the same with that. There was a stage where there's that kid who's injured, Sally, I think her name was, and she's watching this cartoon on her iPad. And that cartoon is like a cartoon that J.J. Abrams had actually developed with another guy, which I thought was pretty cool as well.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was wondering what that was. I'm like, I wonder what they bought the rights off. Okay, that's good to know.
So I mentioned I sat down and watched the special features on this DVD, and it gave me a really good insight into this film that I wouldn't have got with Netflix. And I think we've mentioned before that it'd be really nice if Netflix just put a couple of like these little making of featurettes
on their original films. They have no reason not to be doing it.
Yeah, so I just wrote a couple of notes about it, and I thought it'd be cool to sort of discuss with you. So, and this is obviously going to spoil a few things, but there were about...
We've done our spoiler alert. This whole podcast is going to spoil this film.
There were these two short little, about 14-minute featurettes.
Yep.
So the first one was called Things Are Not As They Appear, The Making of Cloverfield. And it was a nice little doco where you got to see some behind-the-scene things of, these characters and how they did some practical effects on this movie, and I really enjoyed that. So they started off with, Cloverfield's this universe about possibility, and I liked that they started that off sort of telling you, okay, these films are all about the possibility, what could happen. And they spoke about, Oren Uzel spoke, I started writing this in 2008. Like, that's how, 10 years to get this onto screen, and a lot of the little cool featurettes were about, the lighting. Like, they literally used lighting, so they built the whole set. It was filmed on Paramount lot, the whole thing.
You could tell it was
it was on a set, and they didn't use barely any lighting to light the shots. They used they built the set with the lights inbuilt in the actual spacecraft, and they used the different lights inside the spacecraft to light it. And I was like, that's really cool.
So it was actually that proper lighting for the scene was used.
So that's why that's why I had that gritty sort of feel, was because I thought that was cool.
Yep.
I liked as well. So like the actress who played Hamilton, she made mention, this is the first movie I've ever done where there were no shots on location. The only film, and I guess that's true now. There's not a lot of films that just film on a set.
Well, I mean, there's this entire film for her anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, well, actually, she's in a car for a little. I guess she's in the set.
True.
But otherwise, they're in a spaceship the whole film.
Yeah. And the other thing that I picked up on this was that, so one of the characters, Mundy, he loses his arm.
Yep.
and they showed you how they did those
Oh,
effects.
that would have been interesting.
And it was really cool. So he wore like this green sleeve on his arm.
Yeah.
And they had a stunt guy whose name was Kyle, and he played the stunt arm. So it literally showed you like in the scenes with him like, you know, with his arm hanging out, like he's under the actual set, and just so he could still do the arm action.
So you're telling me that wasn't really Chris O'Dowd's arm?
It wasn't.
Wow.
But it was just cool to see.
days.
Yeah, it's just cool to see like his film you spend a bit of time with, those sorts of things. And then the other featurette was called The Shepherd Team, and it was about the cast, and it literally just spoke to each of the cast members. And they just had some nice things to say about the film.
Yeah.
So there's a character called Schmidt, and he's liked that each one had their own cultural background they could bring to the film. Tam, who was the Chinese character. There's a scene in the film where she's in this water tank.
Oh, yeah. Well, not in a water tank.
Sorry, when she's filming it, she's in a water tank. That was 2 full days of shooting for her in that tank.
Oh, no.
And she had to wear weights to like keep herself down in the water when she's
not
like,
to the top.
Just crazy the things these actors go through to make these films. And you know, the guy who played Monk, who was like the Brazilian sort of guy, and he's like, I really like this role because when I was growing up, there were no astronauts that looked like me. And he's like, now I can be an astronaut.
Can I ask you, Zia Yang spoke English or Mandarin in the interviews?
English.
Did she really?
Yeah, she did. She spoke English.
Right.
And I'll finish on, I've got this last sort of point that they wanted the cast to speak Mandarin in this, and there's various scenes where they speak Mandarin. So they had a full-time coach working with each of the actors.
They did sound very good.
Because they're like, we believe in 50 years, this is what the world's going to be like. That Mandarin's going to be the second biggest language. It's already probably the biggest language in the world anyway.
Well, just by sheer population of Chinese people.
I thought that was really cool.
I tend to agree with that.
Yeah. They were cool little things that you don't get on Netflix, so I liked the ability to see those.
Yeah, that's really good. And you know what's interesting about talking about the diversity of all the characters is that John Krasinski was in talks to join this cast.
Really?
And he dropped out because he was filming Jack Ryan. Now I sit there and think, if John Krasinski's in this film, there's only one American in this film. Does John Krasinski have an accent and play someone else, or is he the general, the American guy?
True.
Which, if John Krasinski was that role, there's just not enough meat in that role for Krasinski.
True.
So it would have been very interesting if he had been in this film. I think John Krasinski is excellent.
What is there's so much you can talk about with this.
There is, and that's actually probably what's most interesting about it as well, though. So if you got more to keep going.
So this was nominated for an award.
Yep.
We see this award quite a lot with Netflix films.
Maybe we just look at
the Golden Trailer Award.
Maybe we don't look at many films awards.
But the award was for the best radio ad. I thought the best audio spot or best radio ad.
Good. I like the media advertising team getting some some work.
Very cool. I thought that was cool. There's a little cameo. Simon Pegg, who works in a lot of J.J. Abrams stuff, he did the voice on the radio at the beginning, explaining how the particle accelerator can solve the world crisis. I thought that was cool as well. Just nice little things in this.
Well, the one thing that I find interesting, we talk about that they spent $50 million on this film. The first trailer trended at number 11 on its first day on YouTube. And you almost sit there and go, wow, like, that's almost money well spent straight away.
Build a bit of hype around this film.
Yeah.
Like, talking about that, I guess we can talk about the consensus.
Yeah,
and how many people watch this film.
It's one of our bigger Netflix films that we've done today. So what number is this that we've done, Jesse? Is it 66?
66.
So we've done 66 Netflix original films. This one had a 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb of 86,000. Probably the second or third most that we've had on any film. I think Bright had about 160. We spoke about the Above the Line campaign they had for that. But 5.5 out of 10, not too bad. Real middle of the road kind of number. And a lot lower on Letterboxd, 2.3 out of 5. But again, nearly 49,000.
It's a lot
ratings.
of people.
But yeah, so it's not. It didn't get huge results from a critical consensus. Now, not that I've looked, but I reckon 10 Cloverfield Lane probably would have been pretty good.
Yep. And
Cloverfield probably would have been
pretty good as well.
Yeah,
memory.
Probably in the middle between. I reckon 10 Cloverfield Lane would be probably the most popular.
Yeah. 74% of Google users like this film.
It's a good number.
It's not a bad number. It's probably the best number we can see on here. Because Rotten Tomatoes was not very good.
Okay.
18%.
Whoa!
On 141 reviews.
This is not an 18% film.
18%. That's very low.
It's people wanting to hate on this. I mean, I guess they are taking us along for a little bit of a joyride with this franchise a little bit. But I got hope that he's going to close off the loop at some point and it's going to be really satisfying. Because I made the point of watching the first two Cloverfield films within the last couple of months because I knew this was coming up. And I wanted to have context. As it turns out, I wouldn't have needed context.
No.
But that last scene would have been like, what?
Well, the audience on Rotten Tomatoes was at 43%.
Yeah. So
So-
it wasn't hugely popular.
That's
This
like a bit over 8,000 still, so that's a lot of people.
A lot of people watched it, which is great.
Yeah.
Great win for Netflix in that sense. And I wonder what happens when the next Cloverfield film comes out. For all we know, it's already been filmed and they're just ready to change the name on us.
Well, there's this film I've mentioned on this podcast before called Overlord, and it's produced by J.J. Abrams, and it's sort of like a World War II zombie sort of film. And the rumor was that was going to be the fourth Cloverfield film, but it got released without any connection
World War
whatsoever.
II would make it real tricky to link back to.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Have you got anything else that you want to talk about?
I really don't.
Okay, so
I don't think I do.
I think we should probably talk. Well, we mentioned this was released on DVD.
Yeah.
It came out on the 4th of Feb in 2018 in Australia, Turkey, and the USA, and then the next day the rest of the world.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's a little bit of a different release.
Okay.
And then DVD
Lucky us.
in Feb 2019. So it looks like they had about a 12-month thing where Netflix said, we're keeping the rights for 12 months before Paramount can release it on DVD.
Which we've seen.
Literally like to the day, the 5th of Feb. So.
Okay, we've seen that before.
Yeah. All right, early thoughts. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I do want to say that I had a 68% match on Netflix for this fella.
Yeah.
Not very high. I'm quite a positive film lover, and I get quite high matches, which is deceptive. So
I didn't even have a match on this one, which
ya?
is weird, yeah.
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
68% for me, so I wasn't expecting too much, but I guess it knew the fact I'm not particularly into space mission movies, and despite a few hang-ups that I did have with it, I generally did enjoy it. I still have absolutely no idea what they were actually doing with that big laser thing, and that's why I kind of said to you, sustainable energy, is that what we're doing? And I don't know how they like flip dimensions, but the story was easy enough to follow without getting caught in that detail. I can understand people getting bothered by that, but I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to understand it, so let's just move on. So they did go pretty hard out on a limb on some things that I would have liked a cleaner payoff with. But I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the fact that they actually had really far-fetched reactions to the things that were far-fetched.
Yeah.
So I kind of was like, okay, at least you're not acting like this world is ridiculous. So
Sure.
So yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. Well, yeah.
Good. Yeah, well, as we've probably already spoken about, I really like Cloverfield films.
Yeah.
So I get really excited when that bad robot logo comes on the screen. I'm like, yes, I'm in for a treat. And it's probably my least favorite Cloverfield film, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
It's along for a ride. Like, I like a good sci-fi film. I don't necessarily like sci-fi where there's lots of gibbledy, rubbishy sort of words, and this one didn't have too much of it. It was pretty easy to understand what was going on, so yeah, I got on board.
Easy to understand despite it being pretty crazy in some points.
Definitely.
Like, you could get through it without getting worn down in details.
Yeah. All right, well, let's look at some characters from this film. There's a lot of characters.
There's a lot of characters.
I'm not going to say a lot on each of them because I don't know if you really need to.
Yeah.
So what have you got?
Well, I've got, so obviously Hamilton. Hamilton was our lead lady.
Yep.
We kind of basically follow her. It's her story at the end of the day. She was smart. She was a good voice of reason for probably the first 2/3 of the narrative. She basically said everything that I was thinking as an audience member, but then completely flipped that in the final act, which didn't work as well for me. So she was obviously battling that grief from that really brutal tragedy of losing her kids.
Yep.
And that was a driving force for her decision for being on the expedition in the first place. But interestingly, they didn't reveal that until quite later in the piece. So that whilst it explained her losing that sense of reliability, it meant that for the first 2/3 of the film, we found her very reliable. And then she just kind of just lost that. So I found her very difficult to really connect with by the end of it. Because at the start, I was like, cool, she's just a vehicle for the audience.
Yep.
And then at the end, it's like, okay, she's kind of a little bit crazy and got reason to be crazy.
I thought it was good to have this strong female lead from the start.
Yeah.
And in the middle, I sort of was like, I'm getting lost. But I kind of liked that back end reveal. And that got me back into it when I'm like, okay, what choice is she going to make for this?
So I didn't dislike the back end reveal because the first start of the film doesn't work if you know that she's going through grief, right? You don't think of her as the way you think of her. So I agree, that does work. But then it just got me...
Yeah.
I couldn't figure her out afterwards.
Fair. Michael? I put him next just because he's sort of, with Hamilton, he's the first character that you meet on the screen.
For sure, yeah.
And I had him as like a nothing character.
He was, yeah.
And he's this nice guy, he's a doctor, he wants to help out. I really didn't like... I thought the scenes with him saving that kid was pointless.
I think that the whole of the Earth scenes were... And it's funny hearing it later on that they were so tacked on that they had to at least give him a little story.
Yeah. And that little story just was... Yeah, we already knew he was a good guy because, you hear in the dialogue when he's talking in the car that he's, works at a hospital.
He's a great, he's a selfless dude.
Yeah.
He's a strong guy as well because he's going through the same shit as she is. And he's the one that's, he hasn't got her there. So he's a strong guy, he's a selfless guy.
And it was just like you set him up with something to do by
that's what it was.
And that's what I didn't like about his character.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So we've got a crew of people on the ship.
I think the most important one to talk about first is Schmidt.
Sure.
So I think the film is a whole lot less interesting without that character. They did a good job at making him seem suspicious, despite you thinking he was doing such a great job, and he was probably the key to success. But that combination of him being the safeguard to getting them home, I felt like they could never get home without Schmidt, right? But then I was never
that's
quite...
That's why he's one of the ones that stays there.
But you were never quite sure of the angle that he was actually taking because there were the suspicions that he was the mole, and I think they did that quite well, and it made him and probably the whole story a lot more interesting because you were a bit unsure of him. It's like, this guy's a gun. He's going to figure out, let's let him work. Oh, hang on, do we want to let him work? Because we're a bit sus on him.
So he's one of the ones where the accent... I thought he had a British accent throughout the film. I'm like, he's meant to be German. Where's his accent?
He was German.
Why? Because he had a patch on his arm?
No, he sounded German the whole time.
Didn't to me one little bit. And I was really frustrated, and I'll probably lead into this with Volkov, who was the Russian. I was like, surely we've passed those 1980s movies where you've got to have this tee-off between
Russians and
a
Germans.
Russian and a German. Why...
It was a bit too stereotypical.
It was massively stereotypical. I was like, the Russian's not going to like the German. The German's not... That's like this deceit. Is this a Cold War film?
Yeah.
That's where I was at, and I was thinking, what's going on? Why... I thought we're past the stage where you stereotype nationalities as villains, I guess.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was what got me a little bit with Schmidt and Volkov.
Yeah.
Wasn't a massive fan of their stereotypes.
That's cool. I got nothing else to say on Volkov, really, if you want to cover him now, because apart from the fact that he was clearly set up as the first one that's going to die.
Yeah.
They set that up really easily, so I was like, you know what, don't need to really bother with you too much.
Keel, I had down.
Yeah.
He was just a character to keep everyone on track. That's what I saw him as, is this vehicle to make sure everyone's doing the right thing and we're sticking to what we need to do.
So I got two thoughts on him. Have you ever had a leader in a film have less impact on screen? It took me half an hour to realise he was the one in charge. He was that useless. And to that point, is it interesting that they made him American? Was it just the fact that they had an American and that was the role for him, or was it a commentary on the US being in charge when they're not really in charge?
Ooh, didn't even consider that. I looked at it more as a tokenistic thing. We've got a cast of varying nationalities. We need to put an African American in there as well. That's what I saw it as.
But in charge.
In charge, yeah. So to me, it was like a point of representation.
I found it interesting that the American was in charge, and he was also the guy who probably had the least impact on everything.
And it's tricky though, because they set you up as you're there to follow Hamilton. So usually in a film where you're following the captain or you're following the person in charge, whereas you're not following him. So maybe that's why he felt so...
I don't know. I want to give him credit and say that's what Americans think they're in charge, but at the end of the day, it's everyone else whose feet are working a little bit harder under the water.
Good pickup. I like it. Who else have you got?
I've got Mundy.
Yep.
Basically comic relief,
Yep.
but also had a bit of that everyman feeling to him. He seemed, despite of the fact that he seemed less sciencey, so he became a lot more relatable for the audience. He also didn't overdo the humour, which I think is kind of what works for Chris O'Dowd. I don't think he's good when he goes over the top, but he was likeable and he was relatable.
This is his third Netflix original film.
I've got to mention that, Chris O'Dowd. I think that's the most that we've had.
Yeah, so he's in Mascots.
Bad role for him.
And he was in
Incredible Jessica James, which he was excellent in. Good role.
And to me, this was his best Netflix role.
Okay.
For me, personally. Right. I liked him, and I actually found...
I liked him too.
I thought he was funny.
Ooh.
I really enjoyed his lines. The delivery was on target. It was perfect timing. It worked well with everything else that's happening on that ship or station or whatever it is. I thought it was really good.
I think his humour is better when it's downplayed. He's not the Jim Carrey in-your-face kind of humour. Exactly. And that was what he almost tried to be. His character was terrible in Mascots. Let's almost just write that off. It's not his fault. I thought in Incredible Jessica James he was excellent. But again, it was that low-key kind of humour that works for him. So yeah, I agree.
I had Monk down just because I was like, you've got this Brazilian dude who likes to pray. Yep. So you've got this aspect of praying, making sure everything's going all right. And
What else you got for him?
Not much.
Yeah, he was pretty useless.
Yeah.
Considering he was the second last one to die.
Yeah.
Like, how did he last that long? I'm like, this dude's still here.
Did
He's
well.
not doing anything.
I had Tam down just because I was like, very tokenistic to me as well. It was like, we need to see if we can do big box office numbers in China, so we're going to chuck in a Chinese actress. That, to me, that's how it felt.
So, look, I love Ziyi Zhang.
Yep.
Love her. And I love seeing her in a movie again.
Yep.
So I haven't seen her since she was a lot younger in a lot of Chinese films, big films. And it was awesome just to see her again. I thought that the character was sort of smart and scrappy. I found her to be really interesting once Jensen, when Jensen comes out and says, I don't know who this person is, it kind of made her the difference or the enigma. If they're going to sort this out, it's because of Tam.
Yep.
Because the alternate dimension of this spaceship didn't have her.
Yeah.
So
They had Jensen instead.
exactly. So Tam's going to be the difference here. It made her really interesting to me. I quite liked her as a character. But Ziyi Zhang, well, off the top of my head, House of Flying Daggers, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I think I might have. Memoirs of a Geisha. Like, she probably had all them within 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Massive films, and she was the star in all of them. So she's awesome.
And then Jensen's probably the last one that we haven't touched on.
Yeah, and you know what? We probably should have touched on it earlier. Firstly, what's Elizabeth Debicki doing this kind of role for? Girl's a star. She's a star.
It's an interesting call, isn't it?
Also, a Melburnian. She's very close to home.
Yes. Well,
I've got a few mutual friends with Elizabeth.
oh, really?
I'm actually very good friends with her cousin.
Small world.
Well,
Hi, cousin.
I don't know her very well. You would have seen he was at my wedding, actually.
Oh, wow.
But she's an intriguing character, mainly because she came from this alternate reality. There was this unknown element to her and how she was going to behave, and they kind of gave her a really long leash with what they could do with her in that sense. So they were really clever to pretty much keep her under wraps for the majority of the film. Most of the film, she's just sitting there doing nothing, so you actually don't know what her limit's going to be. And they eventually show this humanized nature to her that shows her being smart and compassionate to Hamilton. But her goal was always to get home and get home with the shepherd.
And in the right timeline.
And home.
Yeah,
home
yeah.
for her. And that never wavered. Like, that was...
Yeah, she was a good decoy. There's a Netflix original film that came out this year called I Am Mother, I think it was called. It's a long way... I think it's called I Am Mother. Very, like, this Jensen character reminded me so much of that film. It's literally like you've got this... It's like a one location film, character you don't know where they've come from, trying to work out what they're from. Just reminded me... And that's actually an Australian film.
Okay.
But yeah, reminded me very much of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
She's great, though, Elizabeth.
Yeah, she was good.
Star.
Director, Julius Onah.
Yeah.
Lots of shorts. Didn't really know anything else.
Yeah, so this is his second feature film off the back of a number of shorts after The Girl Is in Trouble in 2015, which I think had about 800 ratings on IMDb, so not
Pretty
a huge
small.
film, but probably a big one for him here.
Yeah, massive.
The writer,
Trust.
the writer, Oren Uziel, wrote and directed Shimmer Lake, which is one of my favourite Netflix original films that we've done. But he also wrote 22 Jump Street, and he's down to write Sonic the Hedgehog and Detective Pikachu 2, so he's got a bit of a wheelhouse, Oren Uziel.
Go back and listen to Shimmer Lake if you're interested in hearing a bit more about.
Listen
Oren
to
Uziel.
it. It's a great movie. Jesse didn't like it.
You can find that on our feed.
Yeah.
I thought this was pretty well cast.
Yeah.
There wasn't anyone that really.
John Krasinski could know.
I thought this was pretty good. All right, let's talk about some scenes. What have you got that stood out?
All right, my scenes that I liked. The very first scene, I thought it was a pretty good setup in the car to understand who Hamilton is, and Semi, what she sort of has to do. And just that line from Michael, if you go, you and I will survive.
Yeah.
If you don't, no one will. Just sets up the world that we're in and what's going to happen.
That was pretty cool too, like the lights going out with that big queue for gas.
There's and you know what? They were also kind of like just fine with it. Like it was just normal. This is the way the world is right now. So without trying to shove it in your face, the world's pretty fucked. That's kind of where it's at.
This is before the...
This is 2 years earlier, really.
This is before the Cloverfield stuff happens, yeah.
Is that right?
Well, this is before...
The first Cloverfield film?
No, sorry. This is before they open the Paradox, which allows the Cloverfield things to come in. So their world, they've got all that struggle without these monsters coming in.
Right. So I got to say,
So
Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane, do you imagine they're basically happening simultaneously?
It's a good question. Yes.
Yes, I think that kind of makes sense.
Whereas this one, they've said a lot later, so the world gets cleaned up a bit.
Yeah, that's what
So
I'm thinking.
maybe the next film is them defeating these.
We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out.
They've got us bloody suckers. The other next scene I like that first scene when they did that big zap thing, whatever they were doing with the blue light, but their idea of being lost when they were like, where the hell's Earth?
Yeah.
That idea of being lost in space with no direction is terrifying and weirdly claustrophobic, and they captured it really well in that scene. You know that scene in Gravity where she goes out of the ship and she's, it gets me. And it was exactly the same, like, where's Earth? I'm like, oh my God, what do you do? Where do you go? What direction do you go in? Are you going further?
Okay, I wasn't... Yeah, all right, I'll get to that maybe in a
captured that scene, that feeling, really well.
Cool.
And the only other scene I've got is I've described as the mystery and intensity around finding a motherfucking human in the wall with wires going through her arms when she wasn't on the bloody expedition that they left for 2 years ago.
There's some good prosthetics done there too.
There was.
There was that lead up where they kept showing that photo with the crew on the wall, and I was like, I saw it twice. I'm like, who's the blonde chick? Who's the blonde chick?
Oh, did you? I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
But I was just like, what the hell? You better give me a response to this. So that was going to work. But that was all I had for my favourite scenes.
I liked a lot of the comedic lines from Mundy. So unlike a lot of Chris O'Dowd films from previous Netflix films, I thought a lot of his lines here were good. I liked when he's...
You didn't like him in Incredible Jessica James, did you?
Nah, I didn't.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a good change up for me. I liked him, Volkov is talking about, we're not in Kentucky anymore. And he's like, he's like, where, you mean Kansas? He's like, I thought that was really, it was funny. It was really
I'm
well
glad
done.
that you liked that, because that would be the sort of thing you wouldn't like.
During the opening credits, they've got not even the opening, there's these cuts between, you're sort of being introduced to the characters, and there's these innate shots of things that are in the ship, and there's this one of the worms. And then the follow through is Chris O'Dowd's character's like, well, we found the worms. So it was great, And when he loses his arm, he's like, where's my bloody arm? He's like, is there any chance it might grow back? And then the arm's calling around, and he's like, that's my fucking arm. I thought his delivery was really, really good in a lot of scenes.
Doesn't he say something like, my arm did that, or my arm saved the day?
And he gives it the pen. He's like, I thought that was cool. And I mentioned this before. I liked the turnaround with about half an hour to go. That ethical choice of Hamilton knowing that her kids are alive in another dimension, and I thought that was good motivation for that closing of that film. And I liked that.
This is good because we are going to completely be opposed on that.
Good. All right. What didn't you like?
Firstly, when Volkov died, I don't know if you noticed this, but he's dying, and they throw him on that bed, and then you hear the heart rate monitor go flat.
Yeah.
When they never even put a heart rate monitor on him.
Fair. I wasn't paying that much attention.
They just threw him on the bed, and then it's like, beep. It's like, hang on. How's that going off?
Yeah, fair.
And then, basically the other stuff that I didn't like, a lot of it came to the fact that Hamilton basically just decided that she needed to see these kids in an alternate universe. And then when she said, I don't just need them, I don't just need to see them, I need to save them, I was like, this is bullshit. To me, this is where the story went stale, and I get that we needed another reason to make returning to Earth more difficult and returning back home more difficult. And the audience wanted Hamilton to reunite with Michael, so that made that dilemma there. But that reason didn't work for me. You've got these kids that are 2 years old, or probably 5 years older than they were when she lost them. There's another Hamilton down there. Her excuse of I need to warn them not to it didn't work for me. It felt really forced.
Didn't they make some comment about whatever happens in that world is going to happen from the other?
That was her assumption. She's like, I know who I am, and if I was saving money on electricity here, I'm going to do it again, and it's going to happen again. So
okay.
And then that came that idea where she sent the video message to the other Ava or the other Hamilton, stop and hold your kids. I just didn't feel any of that emotion because that part of the story never resonated with me at all. I think they needed to find another reason to make it more difficult for her to come home in the first place.
Okay.
It also bothered me when Keel died, and he basically sacrificed himself, and she never said goodbye to him. She knew what he was doing, and she just kind of stood there, and she could have been like, you're a legend, or thank you.
Looked at him through the window.
She just stared at him. It's give him something. He's about to die, and you know he's going to die. And there's one more scene that I didn't like, which I call the final scene with the monster seemingly eating the escape pod. It just didn't work at all for me. The audience deserves more than that cheap gimmick.
It's Cloverfield.
But is the Cloverfield franchise just taking the piss with these movies that exist outside the universe and just plonking them into it? It almost feels like they are. J.J. Abrams is having a big laugh about it.
He did. He did. thought it was hilarious.
But is he laughing about the fact that it's a funny visual, or is he laughing that he's pulling our leg on?
You sat there for an hour and a half and it's like, haha.
Yeah. It didn't work. But well, as I said, we'll see how it all ends up.
Okay. I didn't really like the Cold War tension idea. I just thought that was rubbish. I spoke about that before.
Yep.
You mentioned that you liked. I didn't like the scene where the Earth disappears because all the characters just started running. And I get that they were confused, but I was like, where are they running? What are they trying to see? Are they trying to get a different perspective? Like, are they trying to see out different sides to see if the Earth's on
That's
a
exactly
different
what they were
side?
doing, weren't
But half of them just ended in the middle of a corridor where there was nothing. Like, I don't know. To me, I was like, that was weird.
they? If it was me, I would be absolutely terrified by that. At first, I wouldn't be on a bloody spaceship, but if that was me, I would be so chilled at that idea, and it captured it really well for me.
Fair. Then when they do find the Earth, like, they all got happy.
That was weird.
Let's celebrate. Let's pop some champagne. And Tam's character, she goes, I'll ask for some dumplings.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was bad.
Really bad.
It didn't sit right with me one little bit.
Yep. Good one.
I
Good
did not like that.
Also, was the Earth just behind the sun? Is that what it was? Was it just like hiding behind the sun? That's why they couldn't see it?
No.
And they were like upside down or something?
Yeah, it was some sciencey thing.
Yeah, okay.
Last one I've got is towards the end of the film, they go outside the station to try and fix it.
Oh, yep.
I didn't like all these climbing ladders. It was just stupid.
It's like you
Fixing
just feel
stuff.
obliged to have a scene where they nick
go
outside
the ship. Yeah, I didn't like that at all. All right, what's this film trying to say? What are some themes, some ideas?
That is a great question. What was this movie trying to say?
Survival.
Like, the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, you can't have your cake and eat it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They weren't. Nothing really hit home with me on this film. This film was enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
But I didn't walk out of it thinking that I grew as a human, which is fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, fair. The little things like survival, like the whole time they're trying to survive on this ship. And, like you said about, you like that setup at the start in the car where it's like, if you don't survive, no one will. So they're in the ship to not just survive for themselves, but they need to get back so they can save the rest of the Earth. So.
And the idea when they realise they're in an alternate dimension and half of them are like, we're going to go back to our dimension, and the other half is like, screw it, let's just go to that Earth and then figure it out.
They could have explored this a bit further, but like these natural resources running out and needing to find another alternative, there could have been more depth to that, I thought.
Sure, I agree.
And, that whole stealing the power is wrong too. And the last thing was family to me. Like, doing what Hamilton could do to try and be with her family and, like, enjoying the company of the people that she has rather than worrying about the ones that are lost. So, I like that touching. That sort of... They touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay, what did we take from this?
Well, you kind of actually touched on this nicely with your energy discussion just then, but I think this is something that could have worked really well as a miniseries.
Okay.
Obviously, it had a lot of characters. They all had their own quirks and they all had their own motivations. And you've got a world, or in essence, you've got two worlds because they go to another reality that's going through their own separate hardships. So if you took the time to develop all of this, you could squeeze out 6 episodes easily and probably get a better result, I reckon. I think this would have been pretty interesting. Whether you can try and sell a random sci-fi 6-part series is another question. Yeah. Considering they couldn't do it in the first place, so they had to tack on the Cloverfield name.
What's it called? So George R.R. Martin, Netflix picked up. So obviously he wrote Game of Thrones. Yeah. Netflix picked up one of his earlier little shorts, which is a sci-fi thing called Night Flyers, and that's stuck in their Netflix somewhere, and it's like an 8-part. Sort of similar thing set on a spaceship. So if you're interested,
I mean, this sort of stuff has been done with like your Firefly and Farscape's a bit more fantastical, but
Star Trek's great.
You do, don't you?
Yeah, I thought this was decent sci-fi, and like I've mentioned, I'm not sure you needed to put this into the Cloverfield world. It would have, to me, it would have. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you needed to put either, and
yeah,
I don't know how the Cloverfield name is as big as it is that it can have that impact. It's funny.
Well, it did, didn't it?
Yeah, I know it did. I'm not disputing that at all.
It's J.J. Abrams, I think. The hype around the last Star Wars he's done, like you put his name to it. I don't know. It's different. Yeah, I wouldn't have minded this on the big screen either. Like,
it would have looked good.
Yeah, it would have looked good.
Screen,
Sound would have been great.
I think it was meant to be made for the big screen, right? Paramount
that money
was
exactly. All right. What did you jump on IMDb to check anything out?
The only reason I did is to see whether Ziyi Zhang has been doing any English movies of late.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure, but the answer's not really. She's
Okay.
So what? Crouching Tiger. I think House of Flying Daggers was 2004, and since then it's been slim pickings from a big commercial sort of perspective. But
Okay.
she hasn't done much English, but it does look like she's in Godzilla vs Kong coming out next year. I don't know in what capacity, but
Cool.
I really like her. I think she's
Yeah.
great, and it just there's a lot of nostalgia in those movies for me. So I did really enjoy seeing it back.
Cool.
What about you?
So I looked up that Mark Stambler guy on the TV at the start. I mentioned him before.
Oh,
He's
right.
the one that was doing that report. I was like,
I'll be frank with you. I read that thing on the internet about him having the same name as John Goodman's character, and I couldn't for the life of me think who the hell he was. I was like, who's this guy who's got the same name? And then when you said it, I'm like, oh, that's right.
so the actor, his name's Donal Logue.
Yeah.
And he's from Gotham. He's like the detective with the Ryan guy from the OC. That was like, oh man, how did I not pick that?
Who's Ryan from the OC playing Gotham?
I can't even think of
Is
his
he
name.
Gary Oldman's character from Dark
Yeah,
Knight?
he's the detective.
Who becomes...
This is my DC knowledge. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
detective. Yeah. I looked up. We spoke about it before. I looked up that Bleep Bloop cartoon just because
did ya?
I'd seen
Good
it before and I wanted to know. And so the guy that Abrams worked with on it's Ben Schwartz, who is on Park and Recs, and he voiced BB-8 in Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
He voiced like the beeps.
BB, yeah. So that's what Beep Bloop. Last one I just wanted to look up. We mentioned her before, Elizabeth Debicki. I just wanted to check she was Debicki. I just wanted to check she was Australian. She is, but she only moved here when she was like 5.
Okay.
Yeah, born in France.
She went to school right
In
there.
Australia. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Questions. Have you got any questions for us?
We've answered my question.
Yeah.
My question was, what is Cloverfield and what does the whole Cloverfield universe represent? Like,
I don't think anyone knows.
no, and is that the big scam? Like, it's like J.J. Abrams is playing with house money and just having a whole lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
And I'm alright with
Don't
that.
blame the guy.
I love films. I'm happy to be taken along for a little bit of a ride, but I've got a limit. Like, if he makes another film like this,
Yeah.
he's gonna lose me.
Okay.
And that's
As
not
long
saying
as
this is a
the-
bad
yeah.
film, but I'm getting nowhere on what the hell what does Cloverfield mean? Do they even say the word Cloverfield in the first film?
I don't know. I can't even. Yeah, they do. Oh, they don't say it, but in. So the thing is, in between the shots that they've got from the found footage,
Yep.
it's like something about Cloverfield Department of.
They do.
Security or
Yep,
whatever
you're
it
right.
is, yeah.
You're right. So it is. It's almost like
A code,
area
it might be a code
51
word
type.
or something. Yeah, US Department of code word. For
All
what
right.
it is. Okay,
That's actually quite cool.
so this is. I'm not sure if I lost this or I didn't understand the time travel or whatever it was, but they're on the ship. Earth comes back into vision, and then there's TV footage of their ship crashing in the water, and there's 6 dead bodies in the ship. So if there's those dead bodies in the ship in the water, and they've just come back into the world,
That wasn't their ship. That was the
another
alternate
ship.
universe ship,
okay,
and that was why Elizabeth Debicki, who's the 7th,
okay, good. You've
from
cleared
that
for me. Yep.
So they were still in that universe. They only switched back to their universe right at the end when it was just Hamilton and Schmidt.
So were this?
So they were in Elizabeth Debicki's universe at that point. So their counterparts were those 6 people that had died, and for some reason she was in the wall.
She was in the wall. Okay. So there were 7 crew altogether.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Cool. Thank you. That helps me. I'm done.
No, good question.
I just thought this idea, like, kill 3 people to save 8 billion. It's a very philosophical sort of question. Like, is that the right thing to do? Or is human life just so special that you just wouldn't kill anyone? You just let things run how they should run.
Because are you killing 8
yeah.
billion?
Or is it something else that's doing that? Yeah.
Or is there going to be another way to save those 8 billion?
Just got to me.
If you kill those 3 people, you know they're going to die.
Yeah.
Those 8 people.
Yeah.
8 billion, sorry. Yeah.
Last one. You mentioned this before. The monster at the end.
Huge.
I slowed it down. Did it eat the pod?
Oh, yeah.
Because I slowed it down, and the monster came up a bit to the left, and the pod to me looked like it went to the right. So,
Cool.
So I just did Michael and Hamilton reunite?
In my view, it went straight through the middle. So
Yeah,
I'm glad that you because that thing was massive.
huge.
It took up the entire screen.
I don't know. I was like,
I bet we'll never find out.
nah, never. Well, unless
the final one is just the girl from 10 Cloverfield Lane catching up
man.
with Hamilton and Schmidt. I don't know.
yeah, tough. All right, I think it's time we
Does anyone survive in the first Cloverfield? No.
no.
They'll die.
none of the characters that you follow. Anyway.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
All right, let's put this all together. We give our films a rating out of 5.
Yep.
Then we average it out. MJ, what have you got for us?
Despite the holes that this film had and the seemingly outlandish leaps of faith that I had to take, I still found myself enjoying the mystery of the journey. Still have a lot of questions about the Cloverfield universe as a whole. Maybe we'll get another chance to answer them on another Netflix podcast.
Maybe.
Because they were obviously seemingly unanswered during this watch. But I'm probably too much of a sucker to let that keep me away. So it's 3 stars for me.
Very nice. All right, well, like I said before, this was a bit of a letdown from previous Cloverfield films for me. As this is it was more of a bunch of people stuck in space story that could have been done without the Cloverfield name. It wasn't anything new, but I did enjoy it, and I'm also giving it a 3. Yeah. So that gives us an average of 3.
3.
Very nice. So we are on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, social media. Check out our posts.
Give us a shout.
Give us a shout out. Give us a like. Give us a retweet. We pop a question up. This week, our question is...
This day,
I can't... Sorry. This day, our question...
Yeah, you can tell who runs the social media accounts.
Definitely not me. So this day is our question, and we've touched on this. So the question is, does the next Cloverfield film come from an original screenplay, or is it intertwined with someone else's story? How do they approach the next one? Do they pick up another story that's already exists and tack it on, or...
I would love to say that they don't.
I would too. That's
but
what
I feel like J.J. Abrams is having a lot of fun doing it this way.
Good. All right, let's see what people say. We're back again tomorrow. Another film, another day. We're looking at the 2018 rom-com when we first met.
I could go a rom-com right now, actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
Bit of up and about.
I'm ready for that.
Directed by Ari Sandel. It stars Adam Devine, Alexandra Daddario, Shelley Henning, Andrew Batchelor, and Robbie Amell. Robbie Amell, Netflix favourite.
He's another... Him and Chris O'Dowd are going to fight it out.
Fighting it out. So we're checking that out again tomorrow. As usual, thanks for having a nice, long, lengthy discussion.
You're the best person to talk about this sort of stuff with for Cloverfield.
Yeah,
so
Cloverfield was good.
It was very insightful for me, and I hope it was for our audience too, with all of our spoilers.
Yeah, all right. I'll see you and everyone else tomorrow.
See you all tomorrow.